While the main plot of Dragon's Rising Season 3 with Thunderfang and the Forbidden Five left a lot of us feeling like it underutilized a lot of really interesting storylines and concepts, the smaller storylines and character arcs were absolutely killing it and stealing the show. Anything to do with the Land of Lee specifically really resonated with me before we even knew that this island was Lee. So the completely sane and appropriate reaction was to spend 84 hours designing a 3,300 plus piece set and spend $460 on pieces capturing its saddest moments, biggest mysteries, insane fights, darkest secrets, and key features. To really do justice to everything that was going on here, the set needed to represent something from three key sections: the neighborhood, the evil inner workings, and the surface. My idea was to have a house on the left representing the neighborhood, with an elevator and gloomy dungeons representing the evil inner workings of this deceptively happy place, and then have a cliff that transitioned into the graveyard and ocean with respective figures for each of these sections. The first section I was going to build was the house, since it had the most aspects that couldn't change from the show and would therefore set the scale for everything that would come later. I'm starting off by building a base using so many of these 6x8 Technic bricks interlocking and then covering it up with plates to set the foundation. This base was actually a lot bigger before to make a backyard for this house, since there were a couple scenes like Wyldfyre's Limbo and Jay and Nia's dance, but it just stuck out too much and I decided to capture those moments in other parts of the building later on. Now it was time to build the main structure. This house is one of hundreds repeated in the Land of Lee to make this uncanny suburbia meant to simulate the outside world. I gathered a ton of reference images to make sure we got it right. I went into building this thinking it would be the easiest part of the build since it looked pretty simple, like those classic Lego houses. I was very wrong. The exterior has got so many of these small details, like a slight protrusion on the dark blue frame, the white overhang having two different lengths and extension, and just so many more details that I could go on about for a long time. So after learning more about this house more than any sane person ever should, I built in the dark blue frame, built one door for the main entrance, and then two more with these little windows since they're for the porch area. I found that these inverted 1x1 rounds with clips came in clutch here to attach the doors at an inset. I now started on the walls, put a large plate on for an attic space later on, and sprinkled in some snot bricks at specific points to attach some lamps and an air vent at the top. Next, the shade structure that the ninja plan out their missions in and where the residents host book clubs on Lee's autobiography. Apparently it's a must read, but don't take my word for it.
Spoiler, it's really Lee-rific.
Counterpoint, it's double Lee-rific.
I built two of these large white pillars and then a cute little picket fence in between, followed by a core white frame with some tiles on the side to give that slight protrusion it had in the show, and then switched over to dark orange parts to build a very neat and accurate pagoda. Now the roof consists of two parts. One was the flat area and came together fairly straightforward with rivets occurring periodically. I also noticed in the show it had whatever this thing was. So I used this rounded 1x1 with a shaft to attach a 1x1 cylinder brick upside down. For those of you left who are still dying to know what that is, I got you. Apparently it's a plumbing vent pipe. Google even goes as far to call it the lung of the house. I can't believe I almost forgot the lungs. The second part of the roof definitely wasn't as easy. Everything started off a 1x3x3 corner plate with some brackets and a huge red base, but there was one critical flaw, meaning that I had to restart the whole thing. So the problem is that the roof isn't lining up that well with the wall, leaving some pretty ugly gaps, but I realized with some modifications, if I leave a little slot in here, it'll neatly slide into place so that we don't have to compromise on any of the looks. I then put dark blue pieces and these 1x1 brackets to build those slight extensions beyond the main roof the rivets have. As I was tolling it off, I ran into yet another problem. There was a pretty awkward gap between both halves of the triangle when it's pretty clear both sides meet at the peak. So I took a bunch of these dark blue 1x2 inverted brackets and put them in to be able to stack some plates and tiles, giving us a much neater peak to the roof. Now you would think I was done, but you probably guessed it, I ran into one last problem. The roof was colliding into a part of the shade structure as well as the door frame. It encroaches at an angle very prominently in the show, so I made some edits for the last time and finished the roof. Moving on to the inside, I laid down some sand yellow wood planks with reddish brown periodically. We don't really get a good look at what specific color of wood this is since most of the scenes inside are pretty dark, so these were the closest colors that Lego had. Okay, now something interesting that's not really shown in the show to my knowledge is that from the front door to the front porch door, there is a difference in elevation because there's stairs here. So that means from the front door living room area to the front porch door living room area, there is a secret staircase that we have never seen before leading between these two rooms, and they've just used clever camera angles to cover it up. Isn't that crazy? Knowing this, I put in some gray plates to get those stairs transitioning to the higher floor, and also made sure to place in open studs for the furniture that was to come. First came this gramophone referencing the one Jay and Nia danced to. I used a Lego antenna piece as the tone arm and a Red Bull as a speaker. I also put in a spider because this was an attic after all, with Jay and Nia having a moment. For the bottom floor, I started out with a bunch of items we see in the living room where Jay and Nia plan with Jenny and Barry on how to discover the secrets of this neighborhood. They consist of a purple couch, a table, a cupboard with teacups on top, and a cabinet with a bamboo plant. The area near the front door is seen to have a breakfast table, so I built that in using these 2x2 bows and a bowl to finish it up. Then I took 8 of these brackets and used them as chair legs. The walls were still looking a bit empty, so I went back to the scene and noticed this really generic abstract art and translated that into Lego. One of the last and maybe most important piece was this clue board they used to try and solve the mystery. So I took a gray plate with a wooden bottom shelf for a marker and eraser, and then 3 of these 1x3 rounds with a pin and a rubber band, and built it on top of a map tile to simulate those red strings connecting clues. And since I was basing it off their house, I had to include Jenny and Barry, Aaron's parents, who have been irresponsibly sent to the land of Lee by a certain someone and brainwashed to think the outside world was destroyed. I ordered their appropriate hairpieces, faces, and pants, built these characters up, and put them in. With the core of the house finished, it was finally time to add in the outside details like these potted plants at the front door, a dark brown base to make a yard wall. The plates kept hitting the studs on the base, so I swapped the 2x2 plate out with one that was flat on the other side to let the fence function properly. In the show, the property also has this white outline separating the property from the rest of the town, so I built that in to get a solid idea on how I was going to do the tile work scene in the front porch area. I used a mix of sharper angled tiles alongside the rounder ones to get the right vibe for the tiles built in, and then placed various jumpers to give minifigures more than enough places to pose around and be able to attach the main table and the seats for meetings. Now we were ready to focus on the extended front yard details like this very geometric hedge. My first versions were a bit too squarish, but I got the hang of it eventually. After I built 3 of these alongside a cute little mailbox and a lamp, I paved the road section up. The battle at the end of the arc can now be simulated by taking Spectral Sora, Wyldfyre, and some Spectral Dragonians and posing them around. With the house section done, we can move on to section 2, Lee's Dark Secrets. First off, the show has this elevator as the main way to enter, with 4 tracks on the outside to which the gears on the platform can rotate on. Okay, I've been testing some variations and I just realized we can make it work just like the show. Basically, we're gonna have pillars like these with teeth on it, which gear can ride up and down on, so it should work out. So I built up 4 pillars colored with bright green on the outside since Lee colored the metal to match the fake hills. Next came in the ever so important gray 1x4 tooth pieces. After adding some grates and tiles to the bottom of the elevator shaft, I built my elevator. Put the gears on all 4 sides and slid it in so I could finish up the elevator shaft with some 1x1 rounds across the whole assembly to simulate bolts tying it all together. Next is this really creepy scene where Lee reveals he was disguised as the reporter that was trying to help them and throws Lloyd and Wyldfyre in jail to get brainwashed by this really creepy monster. Before anything, I set up the rocky base for the rest of the build. Then I took these jail cell frames and put them in with a lock on the front door. These 1x1x2 snot bricks were textured a bit, bulking up the front of the frame alongside these bars. Lloyd is definitely not escaping anytime soon. Now it was time to build what the Ninjago wiki calls the Dream Guyver. Geyer? I don't know how to say that. The really organic shape for the monster was incredibly hard to pull off, so I kept having to restart over and over again. This piece right here would eventually be the answer because I could build the main eye on top of it, put in a bracket alongside a modified 1x3 to which I could take these 2 fleshy assemblies and clip it on. I used these 1x2 bow elements on both sides so that it could be pushed together to fill in the gap. The monster also has these curvy front cheeks, so I then made 2 more assemblies which allowed for 2 longer tentacles that get bigger at the bottom and 2 smaller pincers alongside some more tooth elements to the face. The final touch was to add that lazy eyelid. I also drew on these transparent green tiles to give him the rest of his creepy eyes. I can now attach this guy onto the jail cell ready to brainwash anyone who gets too curious. Now before we finish this section, we kind of have to jump to section 3 first. It consists of the majestic crashing waves and a slick rocky surface. I remember the first time we saw this place when Roz took Aaron to his parents' gravestones, and I was left wondering why this random island got an insane animation budget and looks so visually interesting. So yeah, I didn't want to dedicate too much part budget to this barren wasteland because that would be super boring, but at the same time I did want to capture the vibe of this place in some way because it's super cool. I started on a dividing wall using snot techniques to smoothen it up, only leaving a gap in this section, so that after I built some Technic bricks in to support the slippery mountain path leading to the elevator, I could also have his secret sliding door entrance to Lee's secret lair. I then made one sharper cliff and one eroding a lot more gently. I also took this opportunity to build one of the most important bits of this build, which was to build rockwork around the entire frame, making sure that all these crazy different aesthetics were tied together neatly while reminding you it's all in a cavern system. Now going back to the wastelands, the main feature were these fake gravestones. I designed some custom stickers using Ninjago to say Jenny and Barry and stuck them on before attaching those and some more scattered across the sand. There were also these random rock stacks on the island which I put in, but little did you know that it also doubles as an actuator to explode Aaron's parents' gravestones like how Jay does in the show. While the whole point was that these were fake tombs and that there was nothing here, exploding it here will reveal some pink mushrooms since we're led to believe that's Lee's primary crop, and the sale of those is how he makes money to build all this. Now to make sure we traumatized Aaron the right way, we needed to start representing the ocean. I used these black plates because the one in the show was a mix of dark blue and black, but if I'm being completely honest, it's mainly because the pieces I needed were sold out in dark blue. This worked just as well, and I'm trying to upload within the next few months at the very least. Anyways, I tiled off the more gentle parts of the ocean and put in slopes to represent waves forming with a bunch of transparent white 1x1s to simulate the waves crashing at different points of the build. I even used these transparent posing stands wherever the waves got too violent. Another important feature was the dock. This is again Lee's primary point of trade, but it's also where he met another person for the first time. So I built the rickety post with misaligned wood planks and various different shapes and sizes to the ends, and also the boat that this guy decided to run away in, starting Lee's whole desire to brainwash his friends into staying with him. I put in Lee's friend as well as Roz standing over Aaron's parents' gravestones, cutting off Dark Aaron's ninja wrap and putting his hair on to recreate this pivotal emotional moment that would send Aaron down a dark path for a bit. The first thing I knew I had to do was build those cardboard cutouts of scenery, since they do so much to drive the idea of this being an artificial world home. So I built these 2D cardboard hills with some painted trees of varying sizes, and then some dark green hills behind them with these 2x2 bows representing paths, and then finally a fake sky with some clouds to finish up the wall. In the show, we also see him have this workshop where he makes these fake gravestones, so I first put in the floor tiles and then built him a table with a gravestone in progress, some debris, a crate for supplies, and a place to hold his chisel to work on stuff. I ordered these tan pants, red shirts, different expressions and heads to make the ever so important standard Lees, but also one with white hands to represent sanitation Lee, and some construction Lees that we see running around in the background to really start bringing this build to life. He also has a ton of metal shelves, so I gave him one here so that he always has space to store leftover work. Now some of you at this point may have realized that this build is missing a very important feature, the fake sun and moon, which a whole episode was even named after. So yeah, we kind of had to do it. I built up the sun pretty quickly, but the crescent moon took a couple tries to get the angles just right. In the end, I used these wedges for the middle, then put in some 1x2 tiled wedges alongside some normal ones, and then hinge plates that could neatly finish the arc and give us a darn good crescent moon. I attached the sun and moon to this power box with some piping to give the workshop a more industrial look, but also be able to spin the top and change the time of day. With that, we had finished this 3,300 plus piece Land of Lee mod. Recreate iconic moments like Roz telling Aaron his parents have passed away, Lloyd almost getting brainwashed, entering an evil base to make gravestones, going down the elevator to fight Spectral Dragonians that have leaked into the Land of Lee, have some casual group meetings in the front porch, or have some more serious talks in the secrecy and comfort of the house with Jenny and Barry. even go for a dance to rekindle Jay and Nia's love, and finally switch the time to night and boat away if things get a little too dicey. The Land of Lee arc being something so fresh and new like we've never seen before is honestly an insane feat given how long Ninjago's been around. From the location designs all the way to emotional beats, I'm really happy that I could develop a set that captured what made it so special to me and so many others in the community. Thank you so much for watching, and as usual, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.